And these slides will be, obviously you'll have them now, but if you can't take a picture of them or get access to them right now, they will be available later. This is also being recorded if people want to go back and check that out at a different time. Everybody here, everybody still need a second, or where are we at? So in there, yeah, correct, yeah. So if you go to that, you should be able to open the PDF with the slides. I think it's the first one that's listed there.
That's the first one.
Yeah, so take a second and open that up. Yeah. The one that's not an academic article. Okay, yeah, could just be alphabetical, not entirely sure. Everybody there? Ish, kind of. Oh, yeah, okay, all right. Okay, so the slides are in there. We have access to them. Let me know if you don't. Might have some folks floating around a little bit later to help out with some of the exercises so they can get you there too. Okay, so kind of just to set the stage, again, I don't want to lecture too much at you, but I do have to do a little bit of lecturing, right? So currently, there are roughly 50,000 Gen AI tools that are out there, right? And this is obviously growing by the day. Really, really popular field. No question, these tools are changing the workflows of just about everything, research included. And it's kind of at the point now where the question isn't whether to engage with these tools, it's how to engage with them well, right? So you have to think about how you're using them, why you're using them, when you should be using them, when you really shouldn't be using them, right? And of all of these, so these are some of the ones that we touch on in 535, the class that Brian and I co-teach. We'll actually just be focusing on a small little subset of those today, right? Those two in the far top right, which are Google Gemini and NotebookLM. And this is kind of the layout that I envisioned for this. Now, there may be more work on here than what we can accomplish in the time that we have together, but at least we have a lot that we can go through. So we'll have a lot of hands-on opportunities, right? So we'll talk a little bit about trust anchors and reliability, and then also some data security and defending positions related to data, when to use it, when things are public, when they are institutional, when they are restricted, things like that. We'll talk about some prompting frameworks that you can use. Crafts is specifically the one that I've kind of come up with and used over the past year or so. Then we'll get into NotebookLM. So we'll use the prompting for Gemini itself, but then NotebookLM, we can use some prompting there. But we'll really kind of get into some grounded sources and trying to feel a little bit more comfortable and having reliable outputs there. And then if we have time, we will talk a little bit more about some prompting, but we'll get into some advanced techniques that are out there. There have been many different academic papers showing the benefits of using these different ways to communicate with Gen AI tools. And then finally, something that kind of take home message, if you will, the bookend there at the end, all right? So my hope is there are 6 exercises here. We have just under 2 hours now, but you're going to be driving through most of it, right? So you're going to be doing a lot of this work. I'll be walking around helping you out, and then you'll really be working together too, all right? So just a few reminders with this, right? It's really low stakes practice, right? It's good to get familiarity with these tools now so that when you are using them for your job or further down the line that you're in a high stakes situation, you don't make those mistakes, right? So it's completely fine to make mistakes today. Please do ask out loud if you have questions, right? Chances are somebody has that exact same question. So do speak up if something comes up. Do be skeptical of these tools too. I tell everybody that uses these, right? I mean, they're the large reason that I have a job and I'm doing what I'm doing, but I'm also very skeptical of what you should do with them. And I'm very, very mindful of that, right? So you should push back against these tools so that you get a better understanding of them. I'm also going to have you guys work in pairs today, and that's for a few different reasons, right? One of those is being that it's going to help you collaborate. We're here to learn together, right? So we can bounce ideas off of each other. You will really want to be a rising tide that lifts all ships. There are going to be a lot of people in here that don't have much experience with these tools, some that this will be kind of trivial for, right? So we have a wide spectrum of folks in terms of their capabilities with these tools. So keep that in mind, right? If you see somebody struggling, help them out. And then one thing that isn't really talked about enough, and I did want to actually just talk about it for one slide at least, are the environmental costs that are associated with Gen AI itself, right? It's a very, very big issue, kind of gets overlooked or lost in the wash. This is an image from Saline. I don't know if any folks live around there. Yeah, but there is a data center that is going up, even though the town voted no. And essentially, they were sued, and then they had to kind of allow this or capitulate for this data center to be built. Currently in the US, there are about 5,000 data centers, and that's expected to double by 2027, the end of 2027. And if we were to just think about those 5,000 data centers, right, that is enough to power all of Pakistan, just for kind of a reference here. Every US household for 16 months. And if there's any football fans out there, the big house for 20,000 years, right? And that's going to double in just under 2 years. On top of that, if we don't think about or we consider outside of electricity, there's H2O cooling, right? So hundreds of millions of gallons every single day are being used to cool these data centers. There's also this idea of embodied carbon. I don't know if folks are familiar with that. That's really the life cycle of everything that goes into building something like a chip, right? From being mined to constructed to the usage to being discarded. Where does that go, right? All of that stuff adds up. It has a cost. And then I don't know if anybody recognizes this right here. I'd actually be really impressed if you did. This is the B200. This is NVIDIA Blackwell, one of their best chips that's out there right now.
I knew it was NVIDIA chips that went in there.
Yeah.
I didn't know which one.
So this uses about 1,200 watts of power when it's at full capacity, and that's on average how much a US home can use in a given day, if you average it out. Each one of the towers that holds those, right, that's 72 of those chips, right? So that's 72 households. And then if we look at this sky aerial view here of the Abilene, Texas what is it called? The OpenAI Stargate data center that's being built. It took just about a year and a half. They're still expanding it. But right now that holds, or it's projected to hold, about 450,000 B200s. So that's 450,000 homes just from one data center. Right? And they're roughly 5,000 in the US.
So, okay, I pulled this yesterday night, and we quoted it in a meeting with the chief digital, but presumably by 2028, just the LLM will consume over 1 trillion liters of water annually.
Yeah, really kind of puts it into perspective.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just, so I think this water thing is really going to be something that, and you have that.
Yeah. And it has to come from somewhere, right?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I don't want to spend too much time on the soapbox here, but be mindful of this stuff, right? Okay. So in terms of the goals for today, really want to learn about the different Gemini models that are out there, get some NotebookLM exposure as well, get a better feel for some of the data security and AI tool usage and being responsible with those tools. Kind of develop a prompting technique and how to get some meaningful context, and then also some constraints that you could add in there too to maybe better those outputs as well. We will, if we have time, we will use some advanced prompting techniques there towards the end. And then I really want folks to recognize that AI tools can really help you unlock different ways to learn, right? But it can't replace your thinking, right? And that's a huge issue right now, huge issue that all institutions are facing from K to 12 to post-secondary, right? Okay, so with this, right, one of the biggest issues that we'll face with a lot of these tools going forward, no matter what, even as they continue to get better, is trusting them, right? How do you trust those outputs? And really the risk isn't that you'll use this tool poorly once, it's that you'll continue to or start to believe everything that comes out of it as they continue to prove, right, or to improve. So how do you keep this high verification rate up here as if you're a domain expert, as opposed to succumbing to this automation bias curve that's right here, right? Where eventually these tools become so good as we go from low AI accuracy to high AI accuracy that the verification just declines altogether because everything seems great, right? There's something to be said about that cognitive struggle that you have to go to in order to learn something, right? And there are a lot of different reasons as to why they can be believable, right? They can use some really good technical jargon, some domain-specific terms that make them sound really believable. They can use some numerical specificity, give you some really impressive numbers that are just actually not true at all. Oftentimes they're very good, but it's not always the case, right? They'll do things like use confident hedging, which is to say almost all experts, right? Or many people believe, right? To kind of give themselves a little bit of a qualifier in case something isn't 100% true, which is something that people do too, right? There's also this idea of logical fluency, right? So puts out so much so fast that there are a lot of hidden failures that can go in there that you won't ever detect because most of it looks really, really good. And that kind of goes to this apparent completeness idea as well, where there's a lot of breadth, right? So it hits on a lot of different topics, but it doesn't really ever give you that expert level on most of the things. You really have to dig deep. You have to ask the questions to guide it to get those expert outputs. And then there's also this idea of, well, these reasoning models, they can actually show you their work. They will give you the intermediate steps so that you're thinking about them, so then you can believe everything they say. Well, there's actually a lot of work out there, and I'll mention a study later that shows that these tools will actually falsify those steps in order to get those outputs. And they did some pretty impressive or interesting things in order to test that out. Okay. So this would be just typically like an output from something from Gemini if you asked it to give some sort of research overview or research output. Gives you the references there, right? Looks really good. Although it is an archive paper, ideally you would want something that is cited in a professional journal. But if we were to click on this link, right, and this is just something I did yesterday because I was curious. So if I clicked on this, it's not at all the same paper, right? It is a paper, but it's not the same paper at all, right? It's an archive paper. But none of these authors are the same. The topic isn't the same at all. So I imagine most folks aren't really surprised by that overall. But it goes to show that this is still happening. It's one of the biggest issues with these tools, actually. Okay, so a lot of the times we often focus on what AI is good at, right? But what are some of those unforgivable mistakes when you think about those that would essentially make you fire this if it was an AI assistant doing research for you, right? What does that really mean, or what does that look like? And this is actually the first exercise that we're going to do, and it doesn't even require Gemini. I know we came here to learn about Google and the different tools there, and we will right after this one, right? But this is something that's worth talking about, right? So what would it take to get you to believe the outputs of those tools, right? What does that have to look like? So as a pair, I'd like people to pair up if you could. Ideally, only use one laptop so you can talk about it. If you feel like you do need to use a laptop to create one shared rubric, that's okay. But what I want you to do is make a rubric that you would use to hire for an AI research assistant, right? A vague description like must produce reliable, citable, accurate outputs for academic publication, that's fine. That's almost obvious. So don't use something like that. In fact, for this, you can't use the words accurate or reliable, all right? So that's the caveat there. You also have to include at least 2 specific questions that you would ask this assistant to verify that they would be good for the job, and then at least 1 deal breaker, right? So think about those things for a little bit. We're going to take about 10 minutes with this, pair up with somebody, anybody that you want. I'll kind of be walking around, and then we will come back together after this, and we will see where we're at. For the sake of time, let's come back together. Did people feel, or did anybody want to share whether they felt more of theirs were process or outcome driven? Any thoughts there?
Largely process.
Largely process. Why is that?
Because you control the process, so you have better control over the outcome overall.
Very good.
You want a specific outcome, you don't know what's happening in the middle.
100%. 100%, right? And we were just talking about sycophancy up here, right? So is that outcome just to make the user happy overall, right? Or is it something traceable, a process that you can go back to and tweak if you need to, right? Anybody want to share their deal breaker at all? Privacy. That's a good one. That is a good one. Okay.
It's a produced paper that doesn't exist, right? If you do that.
Hallucinate, right. Yeah, so it's interesting to think about. Yeah.
It's interesting for us because our deal breaker, did they have the background? Because we were really looking for somebody in a certain area.
And that kind of leads into question 3, right? Kind of touching on this. The idea of if it hallucinates one time, can't trust it, right? So if somebody that were a human, they made a mistake, would they just be fired? You just fire them, right? That doesn't mean that you have to treat them the same at all, but it's interesting to think about how we think about these tools. Do we just think about them as tools? Do people think about them as something more reliable, right? Something like that. So any other thoughts on this before we go on? Any lingering thoughts? Yeah.
It's not only process or outcome. Another one is background or input. How do you start with, right? So the input background. Background probably is more outcome oriented.
For us, that was important.
Right. What are your experiences?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Actually, I'm exchange visitor here. So in my university in Korea, we are supposed to take the online courses about the research integrity and anti-corruption and so on. So I think we need to ask AI assistant the same thing, like same level of human as we learn about this research integrity. I think
that's a good point.
But I don't know how to implement that because it's very abstract concept in some sense.
Right. How do you hold the tool accountable? Right. Really tricky question that I don't know that anybody has the answer to just yet. So in general, right, should kind of think about it as trust being earned through process, not style, right? You want to really calibrate those AI tools as though you're the one being evaluated because really you are, right? You're the one that's going to be signing your name at the end of it, putting your stamp of approval on it, right? So you are responsible for those outputs ultimately. And you really need to focus on those verification habits, right? You need to vet everything all the time, right? If you're using these tools, they're really, really good, but they're not perfect, right? No human is perfect. No tool is perfect. No tool is going to be able to do every single job, right? And then you always want to identify your non-negotiables with these too, right? Because they're going to be essential in any field, right? Where's the application of it? Where's the attribution? Where's the reproducibility? All of those things matter.
So, AJ, you know, we probably missed a vote on this, but it's pretty interesting actually, because, you know, if you're trying to like define an AI assistant, it could be a real person or an assistant. Now, we were actually looking for a real person who's going to be an assistant to run the AI, not an AI assistant. And so, you know, I guess if we were going to be looking just for an AI assistant, we would probably spend some time defining who the persona of that, you know, the way that we could talk about in the class, like who they are, what kind of background they have, and create an assistant with certain attributes. That would be the first thing that we would want to do.
I'm glad that you said the word persona because we'll talk about that in a little bit. Okay. So now let's actually start using some tools, right? So in general, the two most popular tools for the Google platform are both Gemini and NotebookLM, right? Out of curiosity, are most people in here using Claude? Can I just get a show of hands? Claude? Gemini? ChatGPT? Pretty good mix, honestly. Are any people using multiple? Yeah, okay. So pretty standard mix. Okay, yeah. Good to know. Okay, so, and you can actually click on this, and that's what I'll do right now, right? What I did was I put together slides that are kind of going to walk you through all of the offerings of this, but I'm actually going to pull it up on the screen so we can walk through it together. But you can just go to GeminiGoogle.com, and you'll be asked to sign in with your U of M account, and you will have access to it through U of M. So here. And this is what my screen looks like, all right? You do have to sign in through UMich. You're not already there. And it's really interesting. I was just at a conference over the weekend and they were talking about the protections of U of M if you're using U of M GPT or the Google services authored through U of M. And some people had brought up how folks had been FOIA'd or perhaps some of their data had been FOIA'd within that. So it might not be as secure as you think overall, or it's still prone to, you know, not all of the protections that you think. Right. But I digress. Okay, so hopefully folks are here. Just the main window that we have here, right? Just your typical chat window. So what you'll see and what the default for Gemini is fast, all right? And fast is going to be pretty much 95% of your use cases, right? This is really the conversation that you'll be able to have back and forth. It's really good at summarizing things, giving you general offerings, things of that nature. If we were to switch to thinking, this is actually the reasoning version. And what's interesting is this is built off of Gemini Flash. So it's still a really fast, small model, but it also has a reasoning component to it. With that said, it does a better job of those more complex multi-purpose prompts that you might have. So it can kind of sift through that a little bit better, but there is a cost with that, right? So it is more expensive to run overall. Now, U of M is footing the bill in this instance, right? But just as we talked about with those environmental costs or computational costs, right? Somebody is footing the bill for that. If we go from thinking to Pro here, Pro is the most advanced offering that's actually running off of 3.1 right now, I believe. And that's one of the more intelligent models out there. It's basically their flagship model of all of these in comparison to Anthropic's or ChatGPT's or any of the open source Chinese models out there right now. And this is going to be one that you really want to hold off of unless you have a deep, thoughtful question, primarily for research or something like that, something that's going to require maintaining multiple code bases, things of that nature, right? It's going to be really, really complex. Most of the time, you won't need it at all. Something else that's kind of interesting, have any folks tried guided learning?
Yeah, that's really good.
What'd you think of it?
I like it personally.
You like it?
No, I do.
Yeah, so if you were to click Help Me Learn right here, it now has the little flag of guided learning, or you could click Tools. You can also just go to guided learning right here. And this is going to basically be an agentic tutor for you. So it is actually an agent. It's in-house, an agentic in-house system here. And it's supposed to just be a tutor that can walk you through things. Now, I found it to be a little bit quick to the gun in terms of giving you answers, right, if you weren't sure on something. And part of learning, right, is that cognitive struggle. A little bit of banging your head against the wall every now and then, right, can be beneficial overall. But that is an option for those that are interested in something like that. Anybody tried creating music? I just tried it the other day. Not great. Not great. Unfortunately, I can't get it off of this either, so I can't get rid of that. Anyway, the other thing to be aware of, we get off a pro here, is deep research. Anybody use deep research?
Oh, yeah.
How do you feel about it? Anybody want to share their opinions?
It does. I liked it. It did a good job of finding a whole bunch of citations that would not have otherwise found.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's really, really good for cursory work of just obtaining a lot of sources right off the bat. Maybe some thought generation. It's a good sounding board as well, right? It can be, although this is more of an agentic system as well. So it's going out, it's hitting the web, it's finding a lot of sources for you. It's doing a lot of that work on your behalf. Now, one thing that you might notice is if you use this for academic purposes, maybe it gives you 60 sources, maybe even 20 of those, 30 of those could be a non-academic paper, right? So it's just giving you something from wired.com, right? So that is also a consideration, right? You really want to look at all of those outputs regardless, okay? Okay. Hopefully everybody is here and can navigate through this. I'm going to hop back to these slides here. Just talked about fast, talked about thinking, talked about pro, mentioned deep research, mentioned guided learning. You should also be aware that when you're going through U of M, you're using U of M Enterprise's account, right? All of these chats over here, you can't get rid of any of that chat history, right? So that is all maintained through IT services. I'm not exactly sure who is maintaining that overall or keeping tabs on that, right? Yeah, so ITS. Yeah, so they keep records of that data or those storage.
Every single
those data retention policies.
Yep.
Yeah, so do be aware if you are using that, right? It's a little bit different from your personal account. And in general, when you're using these Google tools, you can even go to sites on U of M. I'll show you one on the next slide here. It's supposed to be used for moderate data sensitivity, right? So you shouldn't be using it for restricted data or anything like that. And these are just a few of the instances that are permitted, some that are not permitted. Won't read through all of those, but realize that there are some delineations here that you should be aware of when using these tools, right? They're not bulletproof. If you want to learn more about those different types of data sensitivity, what roles, anywhere that you want to go for that, you can go to safecomputing.umich.edu. Looks just like this. They'll give you a bunch of different examples of sensitive data and what they would recommend based on that, right? And that's actually where this comes from, right? So any tool that you want to use through U of M, it'll have a little page like this, so you can check it out, okay? Okay, so I also have a personal version or a personal account of my own for this. And it's important to realize when you're in your personal or the U of M enterprise, right? So if you are in the enterprise version, you will see this little lock here, this little key, this lock and keyhole, right? And then you'll also see a little statement at the bottom, your University of Michigan chats aren't used to improve our models, so on and so forth. This is what a personal one looks like, right? None of those protections are listed. There's no little logo there telling you that you are secure, okay? So hopefully everybody's there and not on their personal account.
We're on the UMich, but it doesn't say that UMich chats.
Yeah, I don't have that.
Interesting.
It has like
Oh, okay. Once you do a chat, it'll.
Oh, just start one.
Say hello or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
At the bottom, it's not.
Yeah.
If, like, for example, like U of M doesn't like continue with
That's it.
Gemini, it's like a U of M enterprise thing, what happens to all the data?
Very good question. Something that I'm not sure on. I really don't know.
What you'll notice is in there, you'll see the shield
But there it is.
versus Ask Gemini.
Mhm.
If you don't see the UM Enterprise there, look at the difference in the prompt box where it says enter the prompt for Gemini. You see the shield versus, so that's your security feature.
Mhm. But the question is, what happens if we are no longer partnered with Google in the future? Where does that data go? Or is it still protected?
Right.
Don't
But
know.
for now, I'm saying if you log in,
It's a very
if you log in and you don't see UM Enterprise above it, because like when I log in, it just says hi, Alan.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, this is just text that I
Yeah.
put here.
Yeah, that's what they were.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Sorry about that. I was just trying to distinguish between the two for you. Yeah. So this is what a personal chat window would look like. This is what an enterprise version window would look like.
AJ, one of the things that we've been talking about lately is that like different versions of Claude, like earlier this morning, they've got now Claude Code and everything that you can run.
Saw that.
But the question is, what happens? We're worried about labs and individuals losing their work, which has been documented a lot.
Yeah.
If something is turned off or something.
By using those tools, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because in a lab, lab environment, you might have a lab account, you have individual accounts, now you have institutional accounts. So you have heterogeneity in like what's saved and what's not. And what we're really worried about is being able to, if we're building lab or building a thesis or building a research paper, that we don't just lose it.
Correct.
That's happening.
Yeah, I believe it. I would say that by no means do I have the answers for all of those things, but I at least have a general recommendation in terms of data types that you should
That's
use.
part of what you're asking. Yeah.
Can't you engineer it to save things locally as it's going, or set up a GitHub for you and like make those commits as you go along? It's kind of protect you.
That is an option if you're
One way to.
field enough to do
That's
that.
what we do in our lab, by the way, and then we ran out of GitHub tokens.
Yeah.
Can't help you.
Okay, so when you're uploading your data, right, you should ask yourself 4 questions, especially when we think about research, right, or just our jobs in general, right? Will this data harm others if it's shared, right? That's a pretty big one to consider. Will this negatively impact my ability to do science / my job if I were to upload this and it came into somebody else's hands? Does this contain information that doesn't exist anywhere outside my lab yet? Another important question to ask. And then finally, this is a little bit more targeted here, but if this output appeared verbatim in a competitor's grant 6 months from now, would that be a problem? Important questions to think about, right? Just some general ones before you upload anything. Okay, another exercise for you here, right? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna have a little bit of a structured debate, and we're gonna use Gemini to help us out, okay? So we have 4 scenarios that'll be on the next slide here. Your pair, your partner and yourself, or your group, however you want to arrange yourselves there, you have to choose 2, okay? And then for those 2, you'll be pro AI for one scenario, and then you'll be anti AI for one scenario, right? So then you'll ask Gemini to help you make those arguments, and we'll see what we come up with, right? I want to see what those outputs look like. So if you're pro Gen AI, you want to make the strongest possible case for why this scenario clears the bar for Gen AI use. If you're anti Gen AI, essentially you're part of the IRB or something like that, right? Find every hole in the opposition's argument and push back really hard, okay? So let's take 15 minutes to do this. You can pick any 4 of these scenarios here. Scenario 1 related to no mention of whether you can or can't use AI tools. Scenario 2, you can write using unpublished prelim data. Is that okay? De-identified data for scenario 3, or NotebookLM to review manuscript for scenario 4, right? Those are just the general descriptions. Pick 2 with your group. Be pro AI, anti AI, and then we'll come back together in about 15 minutes. Want to hear some discussions and tool use for this to help you make your arguments. Okay, after going through your scenario or scenarios, consider these questions here as well. Just 2 questions. I can, yeah. But just think about, did Gemini assist the pro or anti-AI argument better? And then how would you have to change a policy to resolve the scenario that you looked at? What would need to change there? So keep those things in mind too, right? You can refer to those on the slides that you have available to you as well. I'm going to keep this up, okay? All right, let's start coming back together here. Anybody confident enough to answer question one or want to share something they found interesting related to question one?
So what I did was I did the LLM one and I got really nervous with it. I told the thing that my boss is totally anti and I need some job saving arguments. So why I can do this.
Yeah.
And it was really pretty amazing because it says it gave me the Fort Knox argument, data privacy, and you're using enterprise, and the blind bias or the bias and blind spot argument, objective review. And then what it did is it gave me a table about the free tier and the enterprise tier. And then the enterprise tier, they had bold letters, strictly no data is ever used for training.
Oh.
Zero human review of inputs. Your own 100% of your data. And then it had the a few SOC 2/3 ISO HIPAA compliant. And then it just kind of meekly put the free tier and no bold letters.
Yeah.
So and then it said it even gave me other things. Don't upload this to the free personal, and if you really want to protect your stuff, anonymize it, remove names, dates,
De-identify. Yeah.
So it even gave suggestions on better ways to protect yourself and what
Okay. So some useful suggestions, at least. Definitely pumping up that enterprise tier.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Anybody else want to share?
On any? So I did scenario 3, and I asked it to give me a pro, and it actually gave me a con, which was very interesting. It says, don't give me zip code +8 plus diagnosis because it makes the data quasi-identifiable.
Okay.
So even though I said, why should I use it? It said, well, don't do it.
Yeah, I guess that's good overall.
So with scenario 2, and I entered a request to tell me all these good reasons to share it, have my discussion. But at the end, there were a list of 3 guardrails. Be hesitant, don't do this, probably.
I mean, you have to consider all of the jailbreak attempts that have been made on these tools, right? So they've really fortified those walls over the years, right? Interesting. What about number 2? Anybody have a clear policy change that would need to be made for their scenario? Did you ask Gemini? Did they give you anything? One person want to share?
Well, we did the one with the IRB, and basically it's not quite a clear policy change, but they basically told us to check policy. Go back to the IRB and ask them whether you should treat AI as a separate.
Sure.
Just not showing.
Pretty safe, yeah.
But basically, I think the theme was that there was a big differentiator between the personal platform and the enterprise platform, and the enterprise platform thing was more nuanced. And they were in the nuance, they were saying check this, check that, check the data use policies. So they were giving more guidance.
So do you feel better about the enterprise version?
Yeah.
A little bit better at least?
Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
Interesting. Okay.
And also I feel like AI is trying to give a balanced one, but definitely they are not against Gen AI.
Sure.
They want to make sure in the end you want to use it. Right?
Yeah, it's a product after all, right?
Yeah.
Interesting. Manish, did you have something?
Yeah, it was interesting. For me, I think for us, it was more anti Gen AI, because in the end, it said the middle ground usually taken by IRBs today is.
Yeah, we have the same thing.
Yeah, if you didn't tell them you're using AI, don't use it yet. That's not a middle ground. That seems like a very, very super conservative. So I was surprised by that, but that's what it said.
Certainly covering them. So
we had the same thing.
Same thing, middle ground.
Email to your IRB coordinator. Much better than a forced retraction of your study later.
It's being very dangerous.
Yeah. So when it talks or when it comes to sensitive data or different tiers of data, this is kind of something that I've thought about for a while here, as many people have, right? So this is not some end-all be-all rule or anything, but I think it's something that you can take with you and consider at least, and that is that public AI usage should be for public data, right? So something that you're not afraid for folks to see or share or anything like that, whereas enterprise AI is for institutional data, right? And there are different layers to that, right? So if we go to an even finer layer, that's when you would use something like a local AI or locally on your machine, an open source model that is run only on your machine. It isn't used or doesn't have access to the internet at all, right? And that would be for restricted data, right? So there are kind of some different tiers out there along with those different data tiers.
That's good.
Yeah, and if you're unsure, right, you always want to consult with the research lead, right? Because they should really be making the decision at the end of the day, right? Mm-hmm.
Like kind of the converse is true too. So like if like research leads and should we start specifying whether they're okay with, you know, people using AI with their data if they're sharing it.
They 100% should. Absolutely, right? It's something that kind of a lead by example kind of a thing, right? It's discussion that needs to be had, no question. That's a good point. Okay, let's talk a little bit about prompting. So how do you improve the communication with LLMs in general, right? Typically, most of us, we just have a natural, quick conversation, quick question, in and out. Hopefully we get an output, but could it be better, right? And there are a lot of different acronyms out there for all of the different ways that you can prompt, right? But this is just one that I kind of use, put together a little bit here, and that is the CRAFTS prompting framework, right? So C stands for context, right? What relevant information does it need to give you a better output? The role, right? Specify the persona, as Brian had mentioned before, right? How do you want this message delivered? What kind of tone should it have overall? In terms of action for A, right? What does it need to do? Does it need to summarize? Does it need to specify something from a report that you're looking for, right? Those actionable words mean a lot to these tools. What does the format have to look like, right? Is the output going to be in a JSON format? Does it need to be in paragraph format, bullet point format? Does it need to be in Python? Does it need to be in R, right? All of those formats matter. Taboos, I think this is a pretty good one, right? And that's really just pointing to things that the LLM should avoid, right? So trying to put up some of those guardrails or those things that it should look away from, right? And then finally, steps, right? Ask for intermediate chunks. Ask it to kind of show its reasoning a little bit. You don't even need to use a reasoning model in order to do that, for it to break down those steps, right? So it can still be useful in that fashion. Now, this is a lot of text. I won't read through all of it, right? But essentially what I'm showing you here is this prompting strategy in action. So typically you can just have a weak prompt say something like, summarize recent research on mRNA vaccine efficacy, right? Instead, you are giving it context, right? You're supporting a second-year immunology PhD student. Your role is to act as a senior bioinformatics research lead. Action is to analyze and summarize peer-reviewed research. The format being provide exactly 3 bullet points, right? So you're specifying that format that you're looking for. Don't include any preprints, non-peer-reviewed white papers, studies published before 2021, or mentions of pediatric populations, right? So you can really start to get specific with some of those things that you include there. And then finally, describe the steps you will take in order to provide the output. All of these things are likely to make a difference, right? And that's actually what this next exercise is, right? So we're going to use this CRAFTS prompting strategy just as a group, right? You can just pick or think of a weak prompt. I was going to have it so it was kind of adversarial, multiple people within it. We're a little pressed for time, and I want to make sure that we use some NotebookLM here too. So with this, in your group, think of a weak prompt and put it right into Gemini, right? Related to a research question. Could be about anything. Doesn't even have to be about your research, right? But just something pretty straightforward, pretty vague, one-liner, right? After you do that, get the output, and then take that same prompt and improve it with at least 4 of the criteria from the CRAFTS framework, right? So give it a role, give it some context, give it some actionable advice as well. Go through and see how it changes overall. Now, I would recommend that you include it one by one so you see how it adds to the output overall, right? And then at the end, you can use all 4 of them or 5 together, right? Does that make sense? Everybody following me? All right, so let's take probably just 10 minutes since we're only going to do one. Let's do this, kind of work our way through it, and then we'll come back together, see what we find, all right? Okay, let's come back together. Want to make sure we can do a little bit of NotebookLM before we get out of here. Anybody want to share just for question 3, which letter they found to be the most useful, and maybe which one they found to be the least useful? Anybody at all?
We found the role to be quite helpful. Yeah.
Role? Why do you think that?
I mean, we told it you're now assisting a third-year undergraduate student, and it gave a much better, more precise.
Okay.
We also did first, second, third.
Oh yeah. Okay. Did you notice a difference at all?
Somewhat.
A little bit. Was there anyone that you found that wasn't very useful? You won't hurt my feelings. You know, I come up with all these ideas. Yeah.
We wanted it kind of just rearranged all the information into a new like form of list. It didn't really change.
Pseudo format. Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
Also, we're not really using the format for anything. It's just we're looking at it ourselves.
Yeah. It's kind of playing around. Yeah.
So I did find the format useful, not the top of the list. I think the more specific you are on one of them, the better that one is.
Okay.
So I didn't feel like any one of them was better than the other, but the one that was more specific was the best.
Did you by chance put them all together for like a final? No. Yeah. That's okay.
Yeah.
Curious. Yeah. See if it made a difference.
Step sort of more because when you give it a step, it follows up on each of those rather than trying to do something else. You're giving less ways for it to branch out into things you don't want.
100%. I agree. That's kind of why I threw that idea out there. But then it's also the issue of, you're using more prompts, you're like more computation, more power, that kind of a thing. But yeah.
So for the system prompt would already be giving it a role, right? Is that kind of conflicting with what you're doing?
It should be. I don't know what the system prompt is specifically, right?
Maybe some helpful assistant or
yeah, something like that in general, right? So it could be, but then I suppose in order to be a really good assistant, right, it would be doing what you're asking it to do in terms of a different role. But there could be conflicting points, I think. I don't know. Good question. Okay.
Perhaps with the API, it may be better. I'm not sure.
Depends. Yeah, we could talk more about that later. Okay. So in general, I think it's pretty fair to say that context dictates quality, right? You really have to guide these tools in the direction that you want them to go. Crafts framework can be really helpful. Maybe you don't need all of those letters depending on your question. You don't need to go into all of that depth, but hopefully you find at least 1 or 2 or 3, maybe all of them useful. And I do want to point this out, right? Your first prompt is rarely ever going to be your best prompt, right? Even prompt engineers, prompt experts, there's iteration every single time, right? So think about that when you're using these tools. Is there a better way to ask that question, right? Okay. So how do we ground these AI outputs in truth, right? Big question. How do we get verifiable outputs? How can we rely on these things? I would argue that NotebookLM is a step in the right direction. It's not the end all be all. It's not going to give you 100% accuracy every single time, but it can do a pretty good job. So if folks would like to click on this link on the PDF that was shared there, it should take you right to NotebookLM. And I'll kind of, again, I have all of these things that I've walked through, right? But I will just show you in real time what it looks like, and then we'll play around with it a little bit. But this is a really, really powerful tool, okay? And it's powerful because of how much data you can put into it, right? So with this, you can own up to 100 notebooks. And to break that down, one notebook, right, holds up to 50 sources. So that could be 50 different PDFs. That could be maybe not 50 different textbooks, but you could at least put quite a few long novels in there, right? Each source can hold 500,000 words, roughly. And it's interesting because other top-of-the-line models are starting to catch up or have caught up to Gemini's context window. And NotebookLM uses Gemini, just so you're aware. It's kind of like a wrapper around Gemini. You can also have up to 200 megabytes within each source, so that's a lot, right? So 500,000 words, just for reference, is about 1,000 single-spaced pages, okay? That's a lot for just one source, right? If people have used Maisie, it's kind of similar to that, but I actually like it quite a bit more. No offense to the folks that worked on that. Pretty cool tool. But you can hold a lot more in here, and it's free. You don't have to pay for a lot of the upkeep for it, right? So if I were to click on this, take me right here. For folks that haven't used this before, you would just click on Try NotebookLM right here. And for me, I've used it quite a bit. All right, so I have like quite a few different here. I got rid of a lot of notebooks over time as well. But what you'll see here is all of these different notebooks, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the one that has the 5 sources that I've shared with all of you in that link that you had at the beginning, right? So if you were to go to the next slide of the presentation, you could click on a link and it takes you right back to that Google Drive, and that has all 5 PDFs. And we're going to use those as sources, all right? So you'll take those 5 PDFs and you'll start to upload them into NotebookLM. So for you, this would look blank, right? There would be nothing here. If you wanted to add a source, you would just go to the top left here and you would pick to either upload a file. You could actually link websites if this tool can surf through them. Now, it can't do a lot of the agentic work to click through subsites within that site, but you can also link it to a Google Drive, right? So we could do that as well if we wanted. And then you could also just do copied text, right? So if you wanted to just put a note of something that you had written down, you could just put it in there as a source itself, right? So if we were to just go to upload files, it would open everything here, and then you would pick those 5 PDFs that you have downloaded, right? And it will upload them over here. So you have your sources on the left, you have your chat window in the middle, and then you have your studio on the right, right? So this chat window right here, you can tell I've already been doing a little bit of talking to it, wanted to make sure it worked for today. It gives you a nice little summary of all of the sources put together right at the top. And then it offers questions for you to ask if you're not sure what you want to talk about or what you want to ask it, right? But what's really important about this tool, right, is that when you ask it questions, it is only going to answer based on these documents here, right? This is the entire knowledge base, as some folks would call it, okay? So it's not going out to the internet to find sources to give you information. If it doesn't have the answer in these, it's not going to give it to you, or it's going to maybe give you a hunch of something, but say that I can't fully verify that based on these sources. And it does a really good job of that. That said, it's always not 100% verifiable, right? So you really want to look through it. And what's nice is we have our sources here, right? We have a summary of something that it spit out if I asked a question. What you'll see are these different links that are right here, right? So it'll tell you something, and then it shows the links or the citations that are there, okay? And if I were to just click one, right? So if I click number 4 here, it talks about cognitive offloading, it's how it's a phenomenon. If I click 4, it jumps right to that PDF, and it jumps to where it's being cited from, right? So if I just pick a different one, number 11, it will actually jump to the section that it's referring to when it's giving you a statement here, right? And this is a way for you to actually verify an output, right? Is what it's saying actually coming from this knowledge base that you've given it, right? And you'll notice on the right here, you can also do quite a few things to play around with it. You can actually make a podcast, a really popular one. I don't know, have folks tried to actually interact with the podcast? That's a feature now, so you can talk to it. So if it's giving you a summary of all of these sources, you can actually stop it and then ask a question, and it will react to you. Kind of terrifying, but pretty cool also. So you can actually ask it to create a video here, and it will use the sources, and I could just play it here. Won't go through all of it.
If you're a school administrator or an education policymaker right now, I know you're feeling it. That immense pressure to bring AI into your classrooms. It's literally everywhere, right? The hype is absolutely real. But today, we're going to pivot a bit. We're going to look at why how you implement AI actually matters way more than if you do. So let's just jump straight in and look at how AI design choices are directly dictating student learning outcomes. I want to start off by throwing this really provocative.
Okay, so this is only 8 minutes long, right? But you can see
1,000 students.
It gives you an okay output. It used to be pretty bad, I would say, but it's constantly getting better, I will say. So that's a video overview, kind of like a presentation.
Sorry, it made all the figures for the presentations.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. So then this is the presentation that it put together for it. You can ask it to make a slide deck. Now, this one I actually think is kind of a little bit lower quality than most that I would see, but it's still pretty interesting because And you can tell, right, a lot of this is AI generated by the looks of it in the stylings, but it's also pulling real numbers from those PDFs. So these are real numbers that are coming from the study. Again, this is something that you would want to verify every single time for this output, right? But this is also a presentation. And you've probably seen now people give presentations with the little NotebookLM logo on the bottom right, saying that it was generated by NotebookLM, right? Again, this is real data that is coming from this. I checked it out earlier. So it's something that you should really look at. I still like to make my own slides personally because there's some things that the way that I like to put it together, and there's an art to it, I would say. But realize that this is an option, right? And it's pretty impressive. You can also create things like infographics, which is okay, right? It still kind of has those AI stylings, but again, those numbers are real that it's pulling. You can even create quizzes if you want to learn more about the content itself. This is one of the more recent features over the past year. It actually gives you a pretty good table comparing all of the different sources, and it gives you things like the topic, the learning outcome, the key findings, what they were sampling, and then you have a link to the sources there as well, right? Another option as well. Remember, you can have 50 papers in here, right? So it can be really, really helpful. Maybe not so much for 5 papers, right? You can also do things like AI flashcards, and then you can ask for briefing docs, right? So you can get an executive summary, and then you can interact with that. You can even store all of these things as sources, which would come and jump over here, and then you would be able to interact with those as if you were asking questions within the chat, right? Mm-hmm.
So can you add 50 books here?
I think so, yeah, as long as you can get it in a format. Yeah.
PDF format.
No, doesn't have to be. You could even give it a link to YouTube. You could give it a web link. You could give it just copy and paste plain text. Yeah. It will even take, I don't know that it'll take PowerPoints yet, but if you put it in a PDF format, then it uses it same fashion. Okay, so these are just some of the offerings of the tool itself, right?
YouTube, does it watch the video or just does the text like at the bottom?
It will, I'm not sure if it watches it, but it has the transcript, right? So it gets the transcript. Yeah, yeah.
Gemini watches video.
I believe it.
Really?
Yeah, I believe it, right?
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, because now it's getting a lot better. And one of the things that I've used this tool for before is to, if I want to learn more about a paper and I want figures explained to me or something like that, in more depth, I can ask it to please give me the main takeaway of every single figure, explain how they created this figure, and then also talk about some of the strengths and limitations of the study as well. That said, I don't know if it's real unless I actually read the paper first, right? So always consider that, but it is a really useful tool for that too. I feel like I've lost some people here. What's going on? He's staring at me in awe.
It was lost initially just because what I was seeing was different than you, but they can help me. But
Okay.
I have a very basic question.
Mhm.
So let's say I want to add a website
Yeah.
with these PDFs. I stick it in add sources.
You can, or you can click the web right here.
Okay.
All right. You can search the web for sources, or you can use this right here. Yeah, so right down here, right? Even got the little YouTube logo.
About enhancing creativity with GI.
There you go. Okay. So back to our exercise here.
Can we delete notebooks? Like I know we can't delete chat.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can.
That's good.
You can. So that part's good. Okay. So we've gone through all of this, right? You would just sign in with your U of M account, just like we did with Gemini. We've talked about all of these things, uploading sources. This is how your notebook will look. Sources on the left, chat in the middle, studio on the right. That's where you make all of the fun little figures and things like that. And then also you can create things like the briefing docs that I had mentioned, and you can create a bunch of different flavors of those now. It used to only be briefing docs, but now if you click on reports, you can do a bunch of different types of those reports. And again, when you click on a citation, it will usually highlight where it's coming from, right? Really useful. Allows you to vet it really, really quickly. You do things like create a flow chart if you want a nice overview, or if you want to share that with somebody to kind of think about all the topics that are interesting for your study. For this, actually, I used the All of Us study just for these slides. So I had 34 different papers in here, and it did a pretty good job overall of giving me some nice outputs. Let's see. I want to make sure that we talk about something here. Okay, so what I want you to do with the time that we have left, and then we'll come back together here, is to use those 5 sources, those 5 papers, use those as sources, right? If you don't want to use all 5, you don't have to. But I just wanted to have some sort of depth or breadth in there, however you want to look at it. And essentially what you'll do as a group, we'll just do that you either are a grant reviewer or you have the role of a science journalist, right? What you're going to do is you're going to ask NotebookLM questions related to those sources to see if you can help either the grant reviewer or the science journalist with an output that they need. So if you're a grant reviewer, you are looking at a grant proposing Gen AI assisted learning tools across a university curriculum. You must summarize the cognitive impact evidence for a skeptical faculty Senate committee. And again, these are all things that you can talk directly to NotebookLM. Yeah.
Wrote it on that.
We'll see what happens. So the question is, does the evidence support cautious rollout, a pause, or enthusiastic adoption, right? So based on those 5 sources that you'll talk to, which one of those does it answer? And then it should give you a briefing, or your output should be a paragraph, right? And this paragraph is going to tell the committee what they need to know and what you recommend at the end. And if you take the role of a science journalist, what you're doing is you're writing for a general science audience, right? You only have to pick one of these, okay? And what you'll do is you'll tell them whether Gen AI is making people smarter or more dependent, right? Really hot topic, a lot of questions surrounding this right now. Your editor wants accuracy without sensationalism and has asked you to represent both sides fairly, including the new clinical evidence. So your question, if you're a science journalist, is what does the evidence actually show? And what are AI boosters and AI critics each overstating, right? So what promises are they making that they can't really back up? And then with your output, what you're looking for is a paragraph that has an honest headline for this story and what nuance would get lost in a simplified story, right? So what are things that are being overlooked? Again, only pick one of those, work with your group, just take on one of those roles, use the 5 sources within the notebook, take about 10, 15 minutes, and then we'll come back together and see where we land. Sound good? Questions?
I don't know. Do you have?
Okay, let's do it. Okay, we don't have much time left. I know people might still be playing around with that a little bit, so I'm going to skip ahead here. I don't think we'll have time to go through all the advanced prompting, but recognize that there are a lot of different strategies. What we've been doing mostly today is 0-shot, role prompting, right? We did some role stuff there. Few shot prompting, so give a couple examples of an output that you want or what you want it to look like. But then there are some more advanced strategies like rereading, asking this tool to go over it again after it gives you an output. Chain of thought, which is asking it to explain its intermediate steps from here to there. Program of thought, again, you can reference all of these with the slides that you have available to you, right? Program of thought is a pretty fun one, especially for folks that are actually programming, because you'll start to see some statistical tests or some code chunks be created, even if it's like abstract questions. So that can be kind of fun. Also step back prompting, so really kind of getting a key concept whole overview as one form of prompting strategy. Tree of thoughts, it asks the tool to explore many different branches, hence the tree there, before it gives you an output. So it really does a lot of evaluation and reasoning there. Then you can also have things like self-correction, right? So you're asking it to really be its own editor. Also self-consistency prompting. If you want to see examples of some of those prompts, I included all of those. That was going to be one of the exercises. So if you want to see things like rereading, chain of thought, program of thought, step back, tree of thought, self-consistency, all of those things are something that you could check out if you want to learn a little bit more. So the one thing that I did want to end with a little bit, and it is actually a little bit of an exercise, but you don't have to share it, but I would like you to talk with your group a little bit, share one concrete thing that you will try in your work this week with these tools, or maybe you won't try anything, but at least consider something that you'll do with this, right? And then share one thing or talk with your group members about something that you're still pretty uncertain on, right? Because maybe that'll make it stick for you a little bit, and maybe they can help you with it too, right? But take just a couple minutes.
Yeah, I feel like mostly because it didn't let me generate my. Oh, here. I'm gonna get it in.
And also autonomic metrics. Anything you're gonna do, like the wearables. I'm gonna use that NotebookLM to understand it and explore that.
I already generated something. And then later,
one thing you're generally unsure about.
Oh, what first step, how you set up everything.
So I don't know. You're
No, I just did one everything that
Yeah.
But I just don't think I have.
Yeah.
So they just say they will.
I have.
Anything you guys were
Then as we wrap up, I do just want to end with this a little bit, right? So a lot of us have heard this quote with a lot of the tools that we use. This is the worst AI that you'll ever use, right? The next one will be better no matter what. And that's likely true, right? Sometimes they come across hiccups. But it's really important with this, right, that your habits should be more durable than those tools, right? Those tools will change, they'll expire, they'll go through iterations. But if you develop these good verification habits, you'll be in a lot better place overall, right?
Right.
So there's another workshop, right?
Okay.
That'll be in June for people that are interested. I'm sure you'll get spammed with a couple emails here and there. But feel free to register for it even right now if you want to with that QR code. But that will be mid-June if folks are available. Same time, same place. And then if you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. All right.
Yeah.
Get it.
You have also
Yeah, you wrote a program.